Is the Isle of Man still a great place to live? Yes! That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Okay, not so fast. The answer to that question is yes, but. So let's go for a drive along Marine Drive here in Douglas while the weather still holds, and let me try and explain what I mean. So hello YouTube, and first of all, apologies for not posting very much in recent times, in recent weeks and months really. Some of you even messaged me to ask if I'm okay. Very kind of you. Yes, I am okay. I'm just very busy with work and life, and everything's really good and exciting, but unfortunately it means I don't have much time to do videos. I'll try and change that again and do some more, and I'm going to start with this one, and the title, as it says, is the Isle of Man still a great place to live? The reason I'm doing this video, just as a quick background, is I notice, of course, many of you subscribe to this channel and watch these videos because you're interested in the Isle of Man. You're thinking about moving here. Some of you apparently have already moved here influenced by my videos, which I still think is slightly crazy, but thank you for your trust. Please don't sue me if it goes wrong. So many of you, watch this thinking about maybe moving to the island. And I realized that a lot of the videos that I did, the moving guide and the negative things and so on, they're getting a little dated. And it's been a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes longer since I did them. So it's about time to do a quick update to see, has anything substantially changed? Is it still a good place? Is it still worth moving here? And also, I think it's a really good timing for this, because as we know, you have a new government in the UK with Labour, who managed to screw up spectacularly since they took over from the Tories, which is quite an achievement. But they're now about to do the new budget. Taxes are going up. It seems the UK is going downhill faster than anyone thought. So all the hopes for Labour are kind of, dashed. And many of you are in the UK who are thinking of moving here. Maybe you think of the Isle of Man as a better version of the UK. And I think in a way that's a fair way to describe the Isle of Man. So, maybe you have a renewed interest in moving here. So, even more reasons to do a quick update. Is it still a great place? The answer in a nutshell is yes. It's still a very good place to live. On the whole, on balance, it's still great. It's still clean. The people are still friendly. Crime is still low. Taxes are still low. Standard of life is pretty high still. So yeah, generally speaking, especially when compared to the UK, this is still a very good place, safe place, clean place to live. Our crime rate is still pretty low, even though the new chief constable is turning into a bit of a RoboCop at the moment. He was on the radio the other day wanting to bring in facial recognition and ANPR, and he sounded like, we're at the forefront of some really bad. We're not. It's quite safe. You're not going to get your phone nicked while someone cycles past you. You're not going to get stabbed in some back alley like in London everywhere. It's an okay place, okay? On balance, the Isle of Man, most of the things that I said in previous videos, they still very much apply. It's still a lovely, lovely place. Having said that, there is a big but to this. I do feel that the Isle of Man has, in a way, and this is just a feeling, but it's sort of backed up by, a lot of opinions I see and things that are happening in news. I kind of feel and think that the Isle of Man has peaked as far as quality of life is concerned, as far as economic growth in the last 20 years. I mean, we've been growing every year pretty much. It feels like we have peaked. It feels like we are not just at risk of going downhill, but we have already begun our downhill slide. Sounds dramatic, and compared to many other places, we're probably still okay, but I just wanted to mention it because I'm always honest with these things, and I'll tell you the good and the bad parts about the Isle of Man. Unlike the government videos that only tell you the good parts. So what's bad about it? What's negative? What has gotten worse? Well, the government, let's start with that. And I'm going to try and keep this brief, but it's pretty complex. But let's start with the government. For years and years and years, we've been promised by the government, by various administrations through the years, that there will be a reduction in the size of government, that they will, be more efficient, that they're going to spend less money, and nothing has ever happened. Basically, empty promises and lies, time after time after time. I think it's fair to call it lies, because the government, instead of making it smaller, and they promised there'd be less headcount and less costs, no, it's actually gotten bigger. And we're getting fed the excuse all the time, of course, that it's for frontline services and all that kind of thing to keep people quiet. It's not. There's a lot of that what they're And the problem that comes with this is that the government costs more to run. It's the biggest employer over here. And if it costs more to run, then you need more money to run it. And where does that money come from? Taxes. I could give you many examples of where I think government departments are going wrong, and where you could cut dead wood and rot. But I think no example is better than the Department of Health, which is consistently going over budget. And the one moment where I really lost confidence in this government, which by the way I think is one of the worst governments we've had in a long time, was in the last budget. So the Department of Health is always over budget, but people usually are not okay with it, but understanding, because everyone wants a doctor and it's hard to account for it. So fine, if it goes over budget, we're going to pay with taxpayers' money. Last time, it was roughly about 20 million over budget. Now, instead of trying to find efficiencies within government, trying to save money, trying to reduce not necessarily the Department of Health, although I'm sure there's a lot of dead wood in Manx-Care, which is this arm's length layer, this middle layer of bloat that they attach to our health service. I think they could have made efforts and they could have found 20 million in savings within the whole of government. I'm absolutely certain. Anyone who says you can't save 20 million in a year in government if you try, if you're radical enough, is either lying or doesn't know what they're doing. So they could have, but they didn't even try. Instead, they increased our income tax. And that to me was an absolutely disastrous signal. So the upper rate income tax went from 20 to 22%. Now you're going to say, Frank, 22%, wow, that's still so low. Look at me in the UK with 30, 40, or if I was in Germany, probably up to 50%. What are you complaining about, you idiot? Well, it's the signal it sends. Instead of trying to reduce the size of government, of trying to be more efficient, trying to get rid of the deadwood, they increase taxes. Let the taxpayers pay for it. What do we care? It's a disastrous signal. It shows that they are not interested in making the government smaller, and of course this trend will only continue. They told us it's a temporary measure. I don't think it is. It's going to stay. And the signal it sends is bad, because in certain tax brackets you're now actually better off in the UK. So it makes us less competitive. It's a disaster. And it shows that the civil servants who actually run the island don't care. They just care to keep the gravy train rolling. So that's one really bad thing. And I think we have really one of the worst governments in recent times, which is a shame, because when the current lot was voted in, we have our own parliament here, Tynwald, and we have members of the House of Keys instead of members of parliament. Same thing, different name. And when they were voted in, the whole island was quite hopeful, I think. We thought, oh, that's a good mix, loads male, female, young, old, professionals, family people. It seemed like a really good mix. Turns out it was not. It's pretty disastrous. Health is just one example. There are other things where things are out of control, where costs are spiraling, where non-jobs are being created, and then we are asked to pay for it. So I'm worried about the government not knowing what they're doing. I mean, that's nothing new. Governments never do, but on a level that it's getting worrying. So that's one thing. The government is still too big, it's too expensive, and they make taxpayers pay for it. If this trend continues, at some point we'll be at the same tax rate as the UK, and then we're really screwed, because our cost of living here is higher. Then what incentive do you have to live here if it costs you more and offers you less? A clean countryside alone is unfortunately not worth it. So that out of the way. Next thing, crime. Still a very low crime place. It's still very safe. There's nowhere here, where I wouldn't go. It's not like the UK, okay? Or Germany, for that matter. In some areas of Germany are absolutely horrible now. But we have seen some kinds of crime and an increase in the different types of crime I haven't seen here before. So we had our first big e-gaming scandal. As you know, e-gaming, or online gambling, we call it e-gaming now because it sounds nicer. It's online gambling. It's about a quarter of the economy here. Companies are licensed here. It's sort of a big thing here. It's my day job as well, by the way. And there we had our first scandal in over 20 years, our first real big criminal case, with a company called King Gaming, who were touted to be, a big win for the island, and the ministers were swooning when they were about to build their new headquarter here with 300 people and whatnot. Yeah, turned out it wasn't quite what we thought it would be. It's an ongoing case, so I'll show you some of the news articles about it, but basically it's bad. It turned out there were bad people, or there are said to be bad people, because it's still going through the courts. Now the King Gaming thing caused us reputational damage for sure. As you know, I spent a lot of time here, but also a lot of time in Asia for business mostly. And it's knocked our reputation in the industry and the confidence of people coming here. And the Isle of Man is already a bit of a hard sell in the gambling licensing space, because there are other jurisdictions that offer the same product with less effort and less cost. Now, I always call us here the Rolls-Royce solution, but not everyone wants Rolls-Royce. Fewer and fewer people want a Rolls-Royce license, so to say. So we are going to struggle with that. So I can see an economic slowdown there, and companies are already leaving. Some big companies have already left and given their licenses back, so that's not good. But in other areas of crime where I thought I never see that here, we actually had cases here, and I'm honestly still shocked by that, of slave labor. I never ever thought that would be even remotely possible in the Isle of Man, that people would be brought here under false pretenses and forced to work, not in e-gaming or scam centers or something like that, but in, I think it was seafood factory, seafood processing. Insane. I would have never thought that's possible. And on a scale, not just 2 or 3 people, quite a few. Again, I'll put the links in the description so you can read up. I never thought that would be possible. Someone's been asleep. Something's wrong in, the processes behind it, that this wasn't caught. And luckily it seems to have been caught now, but that this can happen here shocked me. It's not something you would think of the Isle of Man as a hotbed for slave labor, right? But it seems some criminal elements abused some of the processes and the procedures of how you move here with visas and whatnot for their criminal purposes, which is absolutely shocking. We have seen more cases and more talk, I think, about organized crime abusing the Isle of Man as an entry point in the UK for drugs and other things. But that's not necessarily new. I think that has always been a little bit the case. It's just more prominent now, so that's there. But by and large, it's still a safe place, but there are now things happening here that have never happened before that I certainly noticed, and are certainly a little bit worrying. So what else has gotten worse? I think it's fair to say travel links have gotten worse. I need to mention that. The main travel links to the island, of course, are the airport and the ferry. That's pretty much the only two, unless you have your own jet ski. I wouldn't recommend that. The last guy who tried it didn't end well. But there were other reasons. That jet ski, by the way, is in the famous jet ski is in the Derby Motor Museum, if you want to see it. So a bit of a legend. So yeah, there are problems with our travel links here. The airport is still a shambles. There's no other way to put it. The new airport director they brought in, I think it was like a couple of years ago, he's already leaving again. He seemingly had enough, and I don't blame him. Now his crowning achievement is to paint some red and green lines into the dirty airport car park. Other than that, I don't really know what he did, because the airport is still an absolute shambles. The travel links are unreliable, there's cancellations and so on. So it's an area where we really need to improve, because if there's one thing we need as an island, it's of course stable, solid, rock solid travel links, and we don't have that at the moment. Certainly not at the airport, where they have a problem with air traffic control. This is not the air traffic controller's problem, by the way. If you do travel here and you are stuck on the runway and being told Isle of Man Airport is closed because the air traffic controllers are on a break, don't blame them. It's not their fault. It's the fault of the previous and probably partially the current management for not planning properly, because air traffic controllers don't grow on trees, and of course you need to plan to have enough of them, and we don't have enough of them at the moment. There are various reasons. It's management failure, it's said to be a toxic culture there, so people leave. Again, it comes down to political leadership. If you don't run your ship right, then people leave, and then you have an airport that's a shambles. The place is a mess, it looks bad. Flights are quite unreliable. And it's slowly improving, but it's not where it should be, and it's embarrassing. So air links are a bit fragile at the moment. Sea links the same. The steam packet, of course, is owned by our only ferry company, is owned by the government now. That in itself isn't a bad thing. They're actually a profit-making venture, so actually government makes money for once. But they got their new boat, as I'm sure you know. You saw my video on it, and it's a very lovely boat. The only problem is it can't really go when it's windy, it turns out, which of course is a bit of a problem, considering that what we get here in winter is a lot of wind. The reason for that is not the boat itself. I'm sure the Manxman can cope with big swells and big waves and whatnot. It's not a problem. It's more the port in Heysham. which is very small, and the Manxman is a very big boat. It barely fits there on a good day, and as they found out recently, if it's really windy, it can get smacked into the pier. It was actually already damaged and being repaired. And as a result, it looks like when it's too windy, we already had a lot of cancellations of it, or quite a few actually, then the bloody thing doesn't go. Which, going into winter now, is a bit of a problem, because they now just rented the Membrane Cree out to Scotland, or chartered it out, or about to charter it out. And that means we're relying on the Manxman for passenger travel in the winter, because the Fastcraft doesn't go in the winter, for passenger travel and of course for freight. So if the Manxman doesn't go and the Ben isn't here, then no food, no newspapers, no mail. Airmail, by the way, is no more. Isle of Man Post has scrapped that, so don't send anything express here, because it's not going to arrive with Royal Mail. So Sea Links also not looking too good at the moment, could do with some improvements. Other than that, of course, the general cost of living is gone up here, as it does everywhere else in the world. And that's, we're absolutely no different here. Everything's gotten more expensive. I notice it when I go shopping. Just your weekly shop is suddenly, it was never, like when we do a weekly shop for us, Micah and I, it was never over 100 quid. Never, because there's just two of us and, we don't eat that much. Now it's regularly, it touches or goes over 100 quid, and that has never happened before. So yeah, cost of living is absolutely gone up massively. Electricity and gas prices are still higher than in the UK. Telecoms and so on. So your general cost of living here is still higher than in the UK, and of course it has gone up. Inflation has caught us as well. Probably not as bad as the UK, but it has caught us. So it hasn't gotten any cheaper. Also, finding somewhere to live still hasn't gotten any easier, especially the rental market is still non-existent, really. As you know, I do sometimes house viewings for some of you who want to move here, just as a favor. I don't charge for those. It's just, okay, if you want to move here, want me to look at a house, fine, I'm happy to. If I have time, stop by. We had a house viewing recently for someone in Lexi, a nice little cottage, and open houses here are relatively unknown, but there was an open house there and there were like 50 people turned up, which is, wow, unusual. We got the house in the end, but only by offering more and by offering to pay like a year in advance or something. The rental market is still dead. If you have money to buy a house, great, loads of properties here. Very stable market still, but rentals very, very difficult. And I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel on that one, because you can't magic up more houses. It's just, there just aren't any rental properties. That's the issue we have here. So keep that in mind when you're trying to move here. Other than that, government services, like I said, aren't getting any better. Their health service certainly isn't getting any better. The health minister resigned recently over this whole shebang with the budget and whatnot. Now I'd say he probably resigned a few years too late. Should have been gone a long time ago, but we're now in a mess with health service. It's impossible to get an NHS dentist. The elective surgeries have been cancelled, kind of that. We're probably not on the level of chaos that the UK NHS is, but it's not looking great. Now, if you have the money to go private, no problems at all. But yeah, just be aware that, there are issues here, and it's not getting cheaper and it's not getting easier to move here. But on balance, yes, it's still a great place to live. So before this gets too long, it's already 20 minutes. Yes, it's still a great place to live. Unfortunately, costs are going up. Taxes are probably going to go up. Government isn't getting any better. Travel links are a bit crappy. Crime is slightly on the up, but nothing I would say as a normal person that you have to worry about. And everything else is still the way it is. It's an island in the middle of the Irish Sea. It's very nice, very clean, very tranquil. We haven't got any more shops. If that's what you're after, you still have to go to the UK if you want your malls. But other than that, it's still a good place to live. So I will try and cover some other areas and do updates on, specific topics in the future. I just want to give you a quick update to say, yes, even though some of these videos that I did are years old now, it's still a pretty okay place. If you take it by its flaws, and no place is perfect. And if you want to come here, drop me a line. Always happy to help people look around and answer questions. Absolutely no problem. So that's really it for this video. Please like and subscribe. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.